The conference room was silent. Ambassador Ji-Hu stood before the massive council chamber, watching 3 alien species decide humanity's fate. The Drexari Chancellor sat in the center, his scaled face twisted in what might have been a smile. On his left, the Veloth Queen clicked her mandibles rhythmically. On his right, the Luminth Elder glowed with cold blue light. Ji-Hu had presented all the evidence: mining records, survey logs, legal documents proving human colonies had rightful claim to the disputed territories. None of it mattered. The tribunal has decided, the Drexari Chancellor announced. Humanity will surrender 3 colony worlds. You will pay 2 trillion credits in reparations. You have 30 days. Ji-Hu felt his hand shake. Chancellor, this is unjust. We have done nothing wrong. Those worlds have been ours for 50 years. Families live there. Children were born there. You speak of justice. The Chancellor's laugh echoed through the chamber. You humans are newcomers. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 3,000 years. You will obey, or you will learn what happens to those who defy the tribunal. Back on Earth, Admiral Taiwan watched the broadcast. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his fingers drummed on the armrest of his chair. 58 years old, gray hair, steady eyes. He had seen war before, real war, not the small border conflicts the galaxy called battles. Sir? Captain Hana stood at attention beside him. Young, brilliant, barely 30 years old. What are your orders? We wait, Taiwan said quietly. We give diplomacy every chance. And if diplomacy fails? Taiwan turned to look at her. Then we remind them why humans stopped fighting each other. Across the solar system, General Dae-Hyun sat in a bunker deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around him, holographic displays showed every human military asset: ships, weapons, soldiers, and other things. Secret things, things humanity had built quietly over 200 years of peace. They think we're weak, his aide said. Dae-Hyun grunted. Good. Let them think that. He pulled up a file marked Prometheus Protocol. It had been created 100 years ago by military planners who understood something simple. Humanity had fought itself for thousands of years. Humans knew war in ways these aliens couldn't imagine. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that most species had forgotten what real combat meant. How long until we're ready? Dae-Hyun asked. We've been ready for decades, sir. Just waiting for authorization. On New Sol, one of the colony worlds the tribunal demanded, people gathered in the streets. Sung-Ho stood on a platform addressing the crowd. He was a simple man, a farmer who had lived there his whole life. His family had been among the first settlers. They say we have to leave, Sung-Ho shouted. They say our homes belong to the Drexari now. What do we say? No. The crowd roared back. Our children were born here. Our parents are buried here. This is our world. The crowd cheered, but Sung-Ho saw fear in their eyes. Everyone had seen broadcasts of alien military power. The Drexari Empire controlled 600 worlds. The Veloth swarm could darken a sky with their ships. What could humanity do against that? The 30 days passed slowly. Ambassador Ji-Hu tried everything. He contacted every species in the coalition. Most refused to meet with him. Those who did offered sympathy but no support. The Drexari were too powerful. The tribunal's word was law. On day 29, Ji-Hu returned to Earth. He walked into Human Command headquarters with his head down. Premier Insu met him at the door. I failed, Ji-Hu said simply. No, Insu replied. You gave peace every chance. Now we try something else. They descended into the command center. Admiral Taiwan, General Dae-Hyun, and 50 other officers stood around a massive tactical display. It showed the entire sector of space around human territory. Report, Insu ordered. The Drexari are mobilizing, Taiwan said. 300 ships gathering near the border. The Veloth are sending another 200. They plan to enforce the tribunal's decision by force. Recommendations? Dae-Hyun stepped forward. We activate Prometheus. Show them what we're capable of. That means war, Insu said. They've already chosen war. Captain Hana interjected. They just think it will be easy. Insu looked around the room. Every face was grim but determined. These people had spent their lives trying to avoid this moment, but they had also prepared for it. Very well, Insu said. Admiral Taiwan, you have full authorization. General Dae-Hyun, activate all protocols. Captain Hana, prepare the fleet. And the message? Taiwan asked. Insu thought for a moment. Then he nodded. Send it. On day 30, the Drexari fleet reached New Sol. Chancellor Vex himself commanded the operation from his flagship. He expected a quick victory. Humans would see the overwhelming force and surrender. It always worked that way. His communication officer looked confused. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Human Command." "Put it on." The screen showed Admiral Taiwan sitting calmly in his command chair. Behind him, officers worked at their stations. Everything looked normal. Peaceful even, Chancellor, Taiwan said. "This is your last chance. Withdraw your fleet. Return to the negotiating table." "We can still resolve this peacefully," Vex laughed. "You dare give me orders? You will surrender, or we will take your worlds by force." Taiwan's expression didn't change. "We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We gave you every opportunity to avoid this, but you chose war." He leaned forward slightly. "Since you chose war, let us demonstrate how it's done." The transmission ended. Vex turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the attack. I want that planet subdued in 6 hours." The Drixari fleet moved forward. 500 ships, the largest military force assembled in 200 years. Their weapons powered up. Their shields glowed. They expected to see human defense platforms, small patrol ships, maybe some orbital stations. What they saw instead changed everything. The space around New Sol suddenly filled with ships. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They had been there the whole time, hidden by stealth technology the Drixari didn't know existed. Human vessels of all sizes emerged from darkness like predators, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. No threatening messages, no demands for surrender. The human fleet simply appeared and waited. On the planet below, Sung Ho and every colonist descended into bunkers built deep into the bedrock. These weren't simple shelters. They were fortresses carved from solid stone, with life support for months connected by underground tunnels that stretched for miles. Above them, Admiral Taiwan gave a single order. "All ships, execute Protocol Prometheus. Show them what humanity has been building." Across human space, weapon systems came online. Secret satellites revealed themselves. Hidden missile platforms activated. AI-controlled defense grids synchronized. And humanity's military, refined through 10,000 years of fighting itself, went to war against an enemy that had never known true combat. The Battle of New Sol was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Every combat-ready vessel humanity could gather. They emerged from FTL in perfect formation, facing a defensive force 5 times their size. The Council's remaining loyalist fleet surrounded the ancient station, ready to defend their capital to the last ship. But Dae-hyun didn't attack. Instead, he broadcast a message on all frequencies, not to the Council leadership, but to every species, every world, every being in Council space. President Minseo's face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. "We didn't ask for this war," she said. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of someone who had seen too much death. "We asked only to be left alone to build our homes among the stars. The Galactic Council decided that our lives, our homes, our children's futures were inconvenient. They tried to force us to submit. When we refused, they attacked us. They killed our people. And when we defended ourselves, they called us aggressors." The message continued. "But we're not the only ones they've done this to. For 2,000 years, the Council has maintained what they call peace. But it wasn't real peace. It was control. It was suppression. Any species that grew too fast, that questioned too much, that wanted more than the Council allowed, they were pushed down, sometimes with threats, sometimes with force. The Council's peace was built on keeping everyone else weak." Ambassador Jiwoo appeared in the broadcast, standing beside recordings and documents. For weeks she had worked with Ambassador Hyon and other sympathetic Council members, gathering evidence. Now she released it all. The evidence was damning. The contested worlds humanity had colonized were never properly claimed under the Council's own laws. The charges against humanity were fabricated by Velthor and his faction, who saw human expansion as a threat to their power. But it went deeper. The archives showed similar cases going back centuries. Young species suppressed, their growth limited, their ambitions crushed, all in the name of maintaining order and peace. The revelations spread like fire through Council space. On dozens of worlds, protests erupted. Species that had submitted to Council authority for generations suddenly questioned everything. Why were they limited to certain territories? Why did the old species control all the best systems? Why was change always resisted? On Nexus Prime, the council chamber descended into chaos. Members accused each other of conspiracy. Ancient alliances crumbled. Some demanded Velthor's arrest. Others tried to defend him. The 2,000-year-old institution was tearing itself apart. Velthor, seeing his power collapsing, barricaded himself in the council's inner sanctum with his most loyal guards. He still believed he could salvage the situation, that the old order could be restored. He was wrong. Admiral Daehyun made a decision. Rather than bombard the station from orbit, which would cause massive casualties, he sent in a strike team. Colonel Jae-hoon, who had defended New Jeju, led the mission. His orders were clear. Apprehend Velthor alive if possible. Minimize casualties. Show the galaxy that humanity wasn't interested in revenge, only justice. The strike team fought through the Council's citadel in brutal close-quarters combat. Velthor's guards were well-trained but hadn't fought a real battle in their lives. Jae-hoon's soldiers had been fighting for survival for months. The outcome was never in doubt. Jae-hoon found Velthor in the ancient council chamber, surrounded by empty seats where representatives used to sit. The alien looked smaller somehow, less imposing than he had been at their first meeting. "Why did you do this?" Jae-hoon asked. "You had peace. Real peace. Why risk it?" Velthor's translator rendered his response. "Because your kind doesn't understand. Change destroys. Innovation disrupts. We built stability over millennia. You would have torn it apart in decades. So you decided to tear it apart yourself," Jae-hoon said. "By attacking us. By starting a war. By proving that your peace was always a lie." Velthor had no answer to that. He was taken into custody without further resistance. With the council leadership collapsed and Nexus Prime secured, the galaxy faced an uncertain future. The old order was gone. President Min Seo proposed something new. A galactic assembly based on voluntary association and genuine equality. No species would hold permanent authority. Disputes would be resolved through transparent arbitration. Young species would have the same voice as ancient ones. The proposal was controversial. Many species feared humanity would now seek to dominate, but Ambassador Jiwoo worked tirelessly with allies across multiple species to build trust. Slowly, painfully, a new coalition formed. Not everyone joined. Some species retreated into isolation, others formed smaller regional alliances. But enough agreed to try something different. Captain Hana was offered promotion to Admiral and a position helping shape this new galactic order. She declined. She was tired of politics and war. Instead, she requested command of a deep space exploration vessel. She wanted to find new worlds, meet new species, and make sure their first contact with humanity was better than hers had been. "Someone needs to make sure the next species we meet gets treated fairly," she told Daehyun. "I want to be that someone." On Earth, a memorial was built for those who died in the war. It listed the names of every human casualty, but also the names of Council species members who had died. Even enemies deserved to be remembered. The inscription was simple. They believed we were bluffing. We proved we were serious. May future generations never have to make that choice again. 5 years passed. The new Galactic Assembly met for the first time in its permanent home, a station built jointly by 50 species, including humanity. The assembly was messy and contentious. Species argued about everything. Decisions took forever, but it was also transparent, accountable, and genuinely representative. Ambassador Jiwoo, now Earth's permanent representative to the assembly, watched the opening session with cautious hope. Humanity had 40 colonies now scattered across their region of space. No one challenged their right to exist anymore. Admiral Daehyun, retired but still influential, spoke at the 5-year memorial ceremony. "We fought because we had no choice," he told the crowd. "We fought because our homes and families were threatened. But now we have to prove we deserve what we fought for. We have to build something better than what we destroyed." Far from the assembly, Captain Hana's exploration ship encountered a new species taking its first steps into interstellar space. They were nervous, afraid of what they might find among the stars. Hana ensured the first contact was peaceful. She told them about the assembly, about their rights, about the fact that they didn't have to fight for their place in the galaxy. The new species asked what humans were like. Hana thought about it carefully. "We're stubborn," she said. "When someone tells us we can't do something, it makes us want to do it more. When someone threatens us, we fight back. We've made a lot of mistakes in our history. But we learn, and we don't give up." On New Jeju, the colony that had started everything, Bo-Ra watched her grandchildren play in parks that had been rebuilt after the battle. The planet still had scars from the war, impact craters that would take centuries to heal, but life continued. People built and dreamed and hoped. In his prison cell on a remote station, Velthor watched broadcasts of the new Galactic Assembly. He saw species that had been quiet for centuries now speaking boldly. He saw young civilizations demanding their place. He saw the order he had tried to preserve replaced by chaos and change. But he also saw something he didn't expect. He saw cooperation between species that had been rivals. He saw innovation and growth that had been stifled for millennia. He saw peace not imposed from above but built from mutual respect and shared interest. It wasn't the peace he had wanted. It was messier, louder, and more unpredictable. But maybe, he thought in his isolation, it was more real. President Min Seo gave her final address before retiring from office. "We didn't set out to destroy the Galactic Council," she said. "We just wanted to live our lives. But sometimes, refusing to submit to injustice means tearing down the systems that enforce it. The old council maintained peace through dominance. We're trying to build peace through justice. It's harder. It's slower, but it's the only peace worth having." An old philosopher named Sung Ho, who had witnessed Earth's first contact with alien life decades ago, was interviewed for a documentary about the war. His words became famous across human space. The Galactic Council believed we were bluffing because they couldn't imagine we would actually fight. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle for survival, to face extinction, to have nothing left to lose. They mistook their long peace for wisdom, when really it was just the absence of challenge. We didn't ruin their peace. We revealed it was never real peace at all. Real peace requires justice, equality, and the courage to defend both. The galaxy moved forward. Some species thrived in the new order. Others struggled to adapt. There were still conflicts, still disputes, still moments when war seemed possible. But there was also dialogue, cooperation, and the slow, difficult work of building something better. Humanity had proven they weren't bluffing. They had fought for their right to exist and won. Now they faced an even harder challenge, proving they could be wise with their victory. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. Far above Earth, ships departed for distant stars. Colonies grew. Children. Operation Thunderbolt began at midnight, Earth Standard Time. Across 3 sectors of Council space, human strike forces moved simultaneously. They were small compared to the Council's vast fleets, but they were fast, coordinated, and determined. General Taiyang had spent weeks planning every detail. Now it was time to see if audacity could overcome numbers. Captain Hana led the primary strike force from her carrier Indomitable. Her target was the Forge of Eternity, the Council's largest shipyard located deep in their core territory. The facility was enormous, capable of building 50 capital ships simultaneously. If left operational, it would replace the Council's losses from New Jeju within months. The journey took 4 days at maximum FTL speed. Hana's battle group consisted of the Indomitable, 3 destroyers, and 2 support ships. Against the Forge's defenses and its protective fleet, the odds were terrible. But Hana had advantages the Council didn't expect. They dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system and immediately launched their attack. The Indomitable's fighter squadrons went first, small craft moving too fast for the old Council defense systems to track accurately. While the Forge's weapons focused on the fighters, the destroyers moved into position and fired their main weapons. Directed energy beams, powered by fusion reactors and focused through crystal arrays, struck the Forge's shield generators. The shields were powerful, designed to withstand conventional attacks. But human weapons weren't conventional. The beams burned through the shields in seconds, overloading the generators and causing cascading failures across the facility's defensive grid. With the shields down, Special Forces teams launched from the support ships. They wore armor designed for void combat and carried weapons specifically calibrated to damage Council technology. Their mission was simple: get inside the Forge and sabotage the construction berths. The teams moved through the facility like ghosts, using routes mapped by reconnaissance drones that had infiltrated weeks earlier. They placed charges on critical systems, uploaded viruses into computer networks, and destroyed equipment that couldn't be easily replaced. The entire operation took 17 minutes. When the teams extracted, Hana gave the order to withdraw. The Indomitable's battle group jumped back to FTL, leaving the Forge of Eternity crippled but intact. Not destroyed, because that would have killed thousands of civilian workers. Humanity was fighting for survival, but they wouldn't become monsters to do it. The attack sent shockwaves through Council space. The forge was supposed to be untouchable, protected by layers of defense and distance. Yet humans had struck it with precision and escaped without losses. If the forge wasn't safe, nowhere was. Similar attacks happened across 2 other sectors. Shipyards, supply depots, and communication relays were hit by fast-moving human forces. The damage was carefully controlled to avoid civilian casualties, but the message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime. The Council's military, built for deterrence rather than actual war, struggled to respond. Their ships were powerful but slow. Their commanders had experience with peacekeeping, not combat. Their intelligence networks, designed for monitoring trade disputes, couldn't track human fleet movements. Panic spread through the Council. Several member species began withdrawing their forces, refusing to fight. The unity that had held for 2,000 years started to crack. 5 minor members formally withdrew from the coalition. 3 others, including the Talric, openly questioned Velthor's leadership. On Earth, President Minseo monitored the campaign with growing concern. The strikes were successful, but the cost was mounting. 7 human ships had been lost. Over 300 soldiers were dead. And the Council still had thousands of warships. Eventually, numbers would matter. In a secure bunker on Mars, Dr. Youngjaw presented Minseo with an option she had hoped would never be necessary. Project Sunfall, Youngjaw said quietly, bringing up classified data. We've developed a weapon capable of destabilizing stars. It uses quantum manipulation to disrupt fusion reactions. One deployment could turn a star into a supernova. Minseo felt sick. You built a weapon that can destroy entire solar systems? We built it because we knew someday we might face an enemy we couldn't defeat conventionally, Youngjaw replied. The question isn't whether we have it. The question is whether we're willing to use it. No, Minseo said firmly. Absolutely not. We're not genocidal monsters. Then I hope the Council never forces us to choose, Youngjaw said. But somehow the weapon's existence leaked. Intelligence reports suggested a Council spy had penetrated Earth's security. Within days, rumors spread through Council space. Humans had a doomsday weapon. They could destroy stars. Entire civilizations could be wiped out. The Council convened an emergency session. Velthor demanded to know if the rumors were true. Ambassador Jiwoo, attending via holoconference, faced him directly. Do you have this weapon? Velthor asked. Jiwoo took a deep breath. She hated what she was about to say, but it was necessary. Yes, we have it. And before you ask, I'll tell you what President Minseo told me to say. We pray we never have to use it. But if you force us to choose between extinction and survival, what do you think we'll choose? The chamber erupted in shouts and accusations. Some Council members demanded immediate surrender. Others called for total war to eliminate the threat. The unity was completely gone now. The Council was fracturing in real time. Then something happened that changed everything. A Council fleet commanded by Admiral Kreshenak of the Sarothian Empire attacked the human colony on New Dublin without warning. Kreshenak was a fanatic who believed humanity needed to be exterminated before they destroyed the galaxy. He didn't wait for authorization. He just attacked. The orbital bombardment began without warning. The colony had minimal defenses, built for protection against pirates and accidents, not military assault. Fusion warheads rained down on cities. 12,000 people died in the first 30 minutes. The slaughter continued for 2 hours before human reinforcements arrived and drove Kreshenak's fleet away. News of the New Dublin massacre spread across human space within hours. The mood, which had been grimly determined, turned to rage. Even the most peaceful voices on Earth demanded justice. General Taeyang prepared a devastating response, targeting Sarothian military installations and potentially civilian infrastructure. President Minseo barely stopped him. Instead, she made a formal demand to the Council. Surrender Admiral Kreshenak for trial. Let him face justice for his crimes. Show the galaxy that the Council actually believed in the laws they claimed to enforce. But Velthor couldn't comply. His authority was already collapsing. The Sarothians were powerful members of the Council, and they refused to hand over their admiral. They claimed Kreshenak was justified, that humanity's possession of the Sunfall weapon was proof they needed to be eliminated. The Council fractured completely. Some species sided with the Sarothians, demanding total war. Others, led by Ambassador Hyan and the Talric, broke away entirely. They formed a separate coalition and announced they would seek immediate peace with humanity. Within a week, the 2,000-year-old Galactic Council had split into three factions: hardliners who wanted to destroy humanity, moderates who wanted negotiations, and confused members who didn't know what to do. Admiral Daehyun met with his senior commanders to plan the next phase. The council was weakened and divided. This was the moment to strike decisively, to force an end to the war on terms humanity could accept. "We need a demonstration," Daehyun said. "Something that shows we can reach their seat of power. Something that makes them understand that continuing this war will only cost them more." Captain Hana understood immediately. "Nexus Prime. Not to destroy it," Daehyun clarified. "Just to show we can reach it. That their capital isn't safe. That nowhere is safe if they keep pushing us." General Taeyang began planning the operation. It would require every combat-ready ship humanity could muster. 400 vessels against whatever the Council could bring to defend their capital. The odds were still against them, but the psychological impact would be enormous. As the human fleet assembled in the darkness between stars, Captain Hana recorded a message to her family. She didn't know if she would survive what was coming. "I don't know if we're the heroes or villains in this story," she said. "I just know we're the ones who won't back down. We're the ones who'll fight for our right to exist, and maybe that has to be enough." Across Council space, billions of beings watched and waited. The war that was never supposed to happen had spiraled beyond anyone's control. Now it would reach its climax at Nexus Prime, where the Council's dream of eternal peace would finally shatter completely. Admiral Daehyun's fleet arrived at Nexus Prime with 400 ships. New Jeju was a beautiful world. It had green forests, blue oceans, and skies that turned purple at sunset. 45,000 humans called it home. They had spent 18 years turning raw wilderness into farms and cities. The capital, also called New Jeju, had schools, hospitals, parks where children played. It was as much a home as Earth itself for the people who lived there. Colonel Jae-hoon stood in the garrison command center, watching his tactical displays. His military force consisted of 800 soldiers, 20 atmospheric fighters, and 6 orbital defense platforms that were disguised as communication satellites. Against 300 Council warships, it should have been no contest. But the platforms weren't really communication satellites. The mining stations scattered throughout the system weren't really mining stations. And Colonel Jae-hoon had been preparing for this fight for 2 years, ever since intelligence suggested the Council might take an interest in human expansion. Lieutenant Su-jin was responsible for the orbital platforms. She was 26 years old and had never fired a shot in anger. Today that would change. She checked her systems one more time. Everything was ready. The platforms had full ammunition loads. Their reactors were running hot, and the targeting computers had been fed every detail of Council ship designs that intelligence could provide. The Council fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 300 ships dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. Their formation perfect. They looked magnificent, like something from an ancient painting of celestial warriors. Each ship was massive, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. Commander Thexal led the fleet from his flagship, a dreadnought called Eternal Justice. He had commanded ships for 40 years but had only fought in 3 minor conflicts. Each time, the enemy had surrendered before serious fighting began. He expected the same today. Humans were primitives. They would see his fleet and realize resistance was futile. He broadcast a final warning to the colony. "This is Commander Thexal of the Vorquin Armada, enforcing Galactic Council decree. You have 12 hours to begin evacuation. Any resistance will be met with force. Do not make this difficult." Colonel Jae-hoon's response was simple. "This is our home. We're not leaving. If you want this world, come and take it." Thexal couldn't believe what he was hearing. Did these primitives really think they could fight? He ordered his fleet into orbital positions, spreading his ships in a standard peacekeeping formation. It looked impressive and gave him fire coverage over the entire planet. It was perfect for intimidation. It was also perfect for what happened next. Bora, the civilian organizer, had been coordinating with the military. At her signal, dozens of mining stations throughout the system activated. They weren't stations at all. They were weapon platforms, built slowly over years and disguised as civilian infrastructure. The Council sensors had never suspected. Lieutenant Su-jin gave the order. "All platforms weapons free." The orbital defense platforms dropped their disguises and opened fire. But they didn't fire at the Council ships directly overhead. That would have been expected. Instead, they fired at pre-calculated points in space, where the Council ships would be in exactly 4 minutes. At the same moment, missiles launched from the hidden weapon platforms scattered through the system. Not normal missiles. Relativistic kill vehicles that accelerated to 90% of light speed in seconds. They were nearly impossible to detect and completely impossible to intercept once they reached full velocity. The Council fleet's sensors detected the launches, but their computers couldn't understand what they were seeing. The missiles were accelerating far too fast. The trajectories didn't make sense. By the time the Council ships realized they were under attack, it was too late. 3 massive warships simply vanished, torn apart by impacts that released as much energy as nuclear weapons. The entire Council fleet recoiled in shock. They had expected resistance, maybe some defiant gestures. They hadn't expected to be hit hard and fast by weapons they couldn't counter. "Return fire," Thexal screamed. "Destroy those platforms." The Council fleet opened fire, and the space above New Jeju lit up with energy beams and missile trails. But the human defenses were ready. Swarms of drones launched from the planet's surface, thousands of small, cheap, expendable units guided by adaptive AI. They didn't try to fight the Council ships directly. Instead, they overwhelmed the Council's point defense systems, forcing the big ships to waste ammunition on tiny targets. While the drones kept the Council busy, human fighters launched from the planet, 20 atmospheric craft that had been modified for space combat. They were small and fast, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot themselves into attack runs. The Council ships tried to target them, but the fighters moved in ways the Council's targeting computers couldn't predict, weaving and dodging through 3 dimensions. The Battle of New Jeju had begun, and within the first hour the Council fleet was in trouble. They had numbers and firepower, but they were fighting a type of war they didn't understand. Human tactics were aggressive, unpredictable, and ruthless. The Council expected formations and formal engagements. Instead, they got ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, and electronic warfare that blinded their sensors. Lieutenant Su Jin watched her displays, coordinating the orbital platforms. 2 had been destroyed by Council fire, but the other 4 were still operational. She targeted a Council carrier that was launching fighters and fired a directed energy weapon. The beam, powered by a fusion reactor, cut through the carrier's shields like they weren't there. The ship didn't explode. It just stopped working, its systems fried by the intense energy. On the planet, Colonel Jae-hoon coordinated ground defenses. The Council was trying to land troops in several locations. His soldiers met them with weapons designed specifically for fighting aliens. Armor-piercing rounds that could punch through exoskeletons, EMP grenades that disabled advanced technology, and tactics learned from centuries of human warfare. The battle raged for 4 hours. The Council fleet kept pressing, kept attacking, but the cost was terrible. 40 ships destroyed or disabled, hundreds of Council soldiers dead in landing attempts. Their formations were in chaos, their commanders arguing about how to respond to tactics they'd never encountered. Finally, Commander Thexal made the hardest decision of his life. He ordered a retreat. The great Council fleet, sent to intimidate primitives, fled from a single human colony. As they withdrew to regroup, they left behind burning wreckage and shattered pride. On New Jeju, the defenders celebrated, but the celebration was muted. The colony had held, but the cost was real. 127 soldiers dead. 34 civilians killed when Council fire hit residential areas. 2 orbital platforms destroyed. The planet's surface was scarred with impact craters and burning debris. Bora organized rescue efforts, pulling survivors from collapsed buildings. She sent a message that spread across human space within hours. "They tried to take our home. We made them pay. We'll do it again if we have to." Colonel Jae-hoon surveyed the damage and prepared his report for Earth. They had won the battle, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Council wouldn't accept this defeat. They would come back with more ships, more weapons, and more determination. But they had learned something today. Humanity wasn't bluffing. On Nexus Prime, the Council chamber descended into chaos. Half the members demanded immediate escalation. Total war against humanity. Crush them completely before they became a real threat. The other half, suddenly terrified, called for reopening negotiations. Maybe they had been too hasty. Maybe these humans were more dangerous than anyone realized. Velthor struggled to maintain control. His perfect plan had collapsed. The enforcement action was supposed to be quick and easy. Instead, it had turned into a disaster. 40 ships lost to primitives. The Council's reputation for invincibility was shattered. Ambassador Hyon spoke again, and this time everyone listened. I warned you. They weren't bluffing. They were ready to fight, and they knew how to hurt us. Now we've taught them that we're willing to attack their homes. What do you think they'll do next? On Earth, Admiral Dae-hyun asked himself the same question. The Council had attacked a human colony. They had killed civilians. They had proven they were willing to use force to impose their will. And they still had thousands of ships, spread across dozens of worlds. If humanity waited for the Council to mobilize fully, the war would be over before it started. But if humanity struck first, struck hard at Council military infrastructure while it was still scattered and unprepared, they might have a chance. President Min Seo called an emergency meeting. General Tae-yang presented Operation Thunderbolt, a plan for preemptive strikes against Council shipyards, supply depots, and command centers. It was aggressive, risky, and would escalate the conflict beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. If we do this, Min Seo said quietly, there's no going back. This becomes a real war. It became a real war when they attacked New Jeju, Dae-hyun replied. Now we just get to choose whether we fight on our terms or theirs. Min Seo looked at each person in the room. She saw determination, fear, and grim resolution. Then she made her choice. Do it, hit them hard. Show them that threatening humanity has consequences. Earth's government center in Geneva was in chaos when Admiral Dae-hyun arrived. President Min Seo had called an emergency meeting of all the major leaders, military commanders, and colonial representatives. The mood was angry. Nobody wanted to hear that they had to give up their homes because some ancient alliance said so. They can't do this, shouted a colonial governor from New Jeju. My people have been there for 18 years. We built farms, cities, schools. We have children who were born there. It's their home. The Council has thousands of ships, said a cautious voice from somewhere in the crowd. We have maybe 500 combat-capable vessels. The math isn't in our favor. The math doesn't matter if we're in the right, someone else argued. President Min Seo raised her hand for silence. The room gradually quieted. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she commanded respect. She had led Earth through the difficult years after first contact, when humanity realized they weren't alone in the universe. Now she faced an even harder challenge. We have 30 days, she said simply. In that time, we need to decide who we are as a species. Do we bow to threats? Do we abandon our people? Or do we stand our ground? Ambassador Ji-woo stood up. She had spent the last 3 days analyzing everything she learned at Nexus Prime. I don't think they expect us to fight. I think they expect us to fold. That's what young species do when the Council makes demands. They submit because the alternative seems too costly. Maybe the alternative is too costly, said General Tae-yang, head of Earth's military forces. But I've been running simulations. We can't win a direct confrontation, but we don't need to. We just need to make the cost high enough that they reconsider. Explain, Min Seo said. Tae-yang brought up a holographic display. It showed the Council's fleet formations, their ship designs, their known capabilities. They're powerful, but they're slow. Their tactics are outdated. They fight like they're in a parade, not a war. Our ships are smaller and faster. Our weapons are newer, and we have something they lost a long time ago. What's that? Ji-woo asked. Experience with real violence, Tae-yang said quietly. We've been fighting wars for our entire history. We know how to hurt people. They've forgotten. The room fell silent at that. It wasn't something to be proud of. Humanity's long history of violence and warfare. But maybe, just maybe, it was something that could save them now. President Min Seo made a decision. I want to try diplomacy first. Reach out to individual council members. See if anyone will listen to reason. But at the same time, she turned to Tae-yang. Prepare for war. If they won't negotiate, we'll show them we're serious. That night, Min Seo held a secret meeting in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss mountains. Only 5 people attended. Herself, Admiral Dae-hyun, General Tae-yang, Ambassador Ji-woo, and Dr. Young-ja, chief scientist of humanity's most classified program. Dr. Young-ja was 70 years old with white hair and gentle eyes. She looked like someone's grandmother. She was also one of the most brilliant and dangerous minds humanity had ever produced. Project Prometheus, she said, bringing up secure displays. We've been working on it for 20 years, ever since we achieved FTL travel. We knew we might encounter hostile aliens someday. We wanted to be ready. The images showed weapon systems unlike anything in the regular military arsenal, relativistic missiles that could cross a star system in minutes, moving too fast to intercept, drone swarms controlled by adaptive AI that could learn enemy tactics in real time, directed energy weapons powered by fusion reactors, capable of cutting through any known shielding. And more, much more. Can we build these in 30 days? Daehyun asked. We already have, Youngja said. Stockpiled in the Oort cloud where nobody would think to look. We have enough for a sustained campaign. The question isn't whether we can fight. The question is whether we should. Minseo stared at the displays for a long time. Each weapon represented years of work and billions in resources. Each one was designed to kill efficiently and terribly. She had hoped humanity would never need them. Show me something small, she said. Something we can demonstrate without causing casualties. If we're going to bluff, we need to show a good hand. 3 days later, in an uninhabited star system on the edge of human space, a test was conducted. A single relativistic missile was fired at an old decommissioned space station. The missile accelerated to 90% of light speed, crossed the system in 4 minutes, and struck the station with the force of a nuclear weapon. The station simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. The test was conducted in full view of passive sensors. Anyone monitoring that region of space would have detected it. Earth made sure the data was clean, clear, and easy to analyze. Then they attached it to their formal response to the Council. The message was simple. Earth rejected the Council's demands. The colonies would not be abandoned. However, humanity was willing to submit the dispute to neutral arbitration, let a fair judge examine the evidence and make a ruling. Surely the Council, which claimed to value justice and peace, would agree to that. The message included the weapon test data, not as a threat exactly, just as information, just to make sure the Council understood what they were dealing with. On Nexus Prime, the Council convened an emergency session. The chamber was packed. Velthor stood at the center, his alien features unreadable to human eyes, but his posture suggested confidence. Humanity has rejected our demands, he announced, and they have attached data from some kind of weapon test, presumably to intimidate us. A screen showed the test data. Some council members studied it carefully. Most dismissed it with gestures of contempt. One weapon does not make them a threat, said a representative from the Sorothian Empire. They're trying to frighten us with a display. It's pathetic. But one voice spoke up in disagreement. Ambassador Hyun of the Talrik rose from his seat. The Talrik were an old species, one of the founding members of the council. They had fought wars in the distant past and remembered the cost. We should take this seriously, Hyun said. I've analyzed the data. This weapon is sophisticated. More importantly, it represents a mindset. They built this expecting to fight. That means they're prepared in ways we aren't. Nonsense, Velthor said. They achieved spaceflight 30 years ago. 30 years. Some of us have been traveling the stars for millennia. They cannot threaten us. Underestimating an opponent is how wars are lost, Hyun warned. But he was outvoted. The Council had made its decision long before this meeting. Humanity would be made an example. Any young species thinking of challenging the established order would see what happened to those who refused to submit. Velthor issued a new decree. Humanity had 72 hours to begin evacuating the contested colonies. After that, the Council would send a fleet to restore order. A force of 300 warships would be dispatched to the nearest human colony. 300 ships. The Council believed it was overwhelming force for such a minor situation. It was more ships than they had deployed in the last 5 centuries combined. When news of the fleet reached Earth, General Taeyang gathered his senior commanders. Captain Hana was among them, along with Colonel Jae-hoon, who commanded the garrison on New Jeju, the colony the Council fleet was heading toward. They're coming, Taeyang said, and they still think we're bluffing. So we're going to have to show them we're not. Admiral Dae-hyun looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching Council fleet. Their formations were perfect, their ships gleaming and new. They looked invincible, but Hana was right. They didn't know how to fight. Not really. Prepare the colonies, Dae-hyun ordered. Activate all hidden defenses, and get our ships into position. When they arrive, we're going to teach them a lesson about threatening humanity. On New Jeju, colonists received the evacuation order from the Council and the message from Earth. Stay strong, we're not abandoning you. In the streets, people gathered. Some were afraid. Many were angry. All of them were determined. A woman named Bo-Ra, who ran a civilian mining operation, organized a resistance committee. "This is our home," she told the crowd. "Our children were born here. We're not leaving because some ancient alliance says we have to. If they want this world, they'll have to take it from us." The countdown began. 72 hours until the council fleet arrived. 72 hours until the galaxy found out if humanity was bluffing or not.